be here. So we'll start the recording. All right, and we've got a little bit of a presentation, not too long. We'll kind of walk through that to give you a little bit of context about where we are and where we're headed, some things to think about and be aware of, and then we'll open it up for lots of questions as well. So let me share that. There we go. All right, so hopefully you're all 9th and 10th grade families here in the right place. Just to give you a sense of what we're going to cover tonight. And if you're wondering, we just got here. My child has now been at Governor's for about 8 weeks. Why are we talking to the college counseling office? We're barely figuring out this place at the moment. And that is absolutely where you should be and where they should be. We just wanted to take a few minutes to connect, to introduce ourselves, so that you are familiar. You got this email from your child's college counselor at the end of last week, so you could see our faces, hear a little bit about what we do here at Governors, and reassure you that we are absolutely not intending to make your child's entire experience about college. That's about the opposite of what we want to do. But we have found, we know that your students and you are all certainly thinking about college down the road. You have an eye towards the future, and we just want to let you kind of know what we're here for, give you a few things to think about as you go through the next year to 2 years. We will start working with your students formally in the fall of their junior year. But we know that they're thinking about college a lot before that. So we just want to give you some of our thoughts and our philosophy about this process and what it looks like in 2025, and 2027 and 2028 as you all look ahead towards that. So we'll do some introductions, let you know who we are. We'll talk a little bit about kind of where we are in the semester. Those first grades of the year just came out, those progress reports, along with teacher comments. So we'll talk a little bit about what those mean, and kind of how to use those. We'll talk a little bit about our philosophy and our approach to this process with some recommendations of what to be focusing on now. Talk about what colleges are looking for, what really matters to colleges. And then, of course, some practical considerations. We'll talk a little bit about standardized testing, athletic recruitment, visiting colleges, and affordability. We know those are all things that are on your mind, so we want to make sure we cover those as well. But first, there we go. This picture made me realize just how short I am when I saw our yearbook photo from the yearbook staff. But wanted to give you a visual, particularly Eric Berard in the bright blue shirt there in the middle is our college counseling coordinator. He sits at the front desk up on the 3rd floor of Phillips Hall if you come up to the college counseling office. He's not with us tonight, but wanted to give you the visual there. He lives in Eames dorm on campus for those of you who have boarders. He also just wrapped up coaching or assistant coaching Thirds boys soccer. So some of you may have heard that name, and he works with some of our students on weekend activities. So you may have heard that name and seen his face. I'm Heather Shows. As I said, I'm the director of college counseling. I've been here at Governor's this is my 14th year in the college counseling office. I don't live on campus. I live in Andover and commute over. But I am an advisor. I do work with community service on campus. I advise and oversee the community service program in the afternoon and the spring. And I have a sophomore, so I am actually a 10th grade parent myself of a child at Governor. So I'll share a little bit of that as well. But I want to turn it over to my colleague Harry Bachrach to introduce himself as well.
Thanks, Heather. Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a good evening. My name is Harry Bachrach. This is my first year at Govs. Happy part of the campus community. I just finished my first season as an assistant coach for cross country, which was a lot of fun. And I live in Perkins as a dorm parent. So I am getting to know the Gov students in a lot of different ways here. And I'll turn it over to Jack.
Thanks, Harry. My name's Jack Nivison. I have been here at Govs. This is my 4th year. I live on campus, but not in a dorm. I live in a small house with my wife and my dog, who you might hear running around behind me, and it's probably fine. And I help coach basketball here on campus, and I'm also an advisor. But thank you for joining us tonight. We're happy to have you.
All right, so just to give you a little bit of a sense of kind of where we are in terms of the year, you hopefully by now have seen in the parent portal your students' progress report grades. which are really just a snapshot of their performance up to this point in the semester. They are not official at all. They do not go on to students' transcripts. They are never released outside of governors. The only exception to that is by the time your students get to senior year, we do share these grades with colleges where students have submitted early applications. So that's the only time that a mid-semester grade would ever be sent outside of governors. These are really just a chance for students to kind of check in, get a little reality check of how they're doing this semester, and of course, get that great feedback from their teachers and those teacher comments. So they have a sense of what they might be doing to improve, how their performance is going, what their teachers are seeing in the classroom. So we really just want to recommend that you use these grades as a chance to pause and reflect. A lot of our students are very dramatic. We've heard a lot of, oh my gosh, I'm never going to college with these grades. And how am I ever going to pull this grade up in this class? This is truly just a snapshot, but it is a chance for our students to pause and reflect, which we don't really give them a lot of time in general at Governors. Life is moving pretty quickly, so we don't give them a lot of opportunities. And that's one area where I think families can really help their students to just take a moment, reflect on these grades. Did anything surprise your student? Did they have a good idea of where their performance fell in these classes? Were any of them a little higher or a little lower than they expected? Why might that be? Are there things they could have been paying more attention to, or could they have been working their teacher to maybe have a little better sense of how things were going? What are their teachers saying in their comments? Our teachers do a fantastic job of really articulating what our students are doing well and where they might improve. So, can your student implement those suggestions? Do they feel realistic? Is there one or two things they could just tweak, or a behavior or practice they could put in and implement to see some improvement? We know, particularly for our students, our new ninth graders especially, a lot of our teachers will say, hey, come see me for extra help when you have questions, when you're struggling with a concept, or if you want to, give an overview of a paper before you turn it in and show me a draft to work through, please come see me. That can feel overwhelming. And I think a lot of them think, oh, gosh, in middle school, that really wasn't a cool thing to do. Those were just the kids that were really struggling that went and sought help from their teachers or stayed after class. That's not me. I don't have those, I'm not a bad student. They think that's some kind of indicator, but what they're going to find and what their advisors, their college counselors, their teachers are going to keep hammering home is that that's the way to be successful at Governors, is to make sure you're taking advantage. Our teachers are incredibly accessible and very, very willing. When they say that they are there to help, they mean that. They are absolutely, ready to go above and beyond to meet with our students and make sure that they're really understanding. They understand the expectations, they understand the concepts. So the more you can just encourage your students to reach out to use that, take that seriously. Your teachers mean it. They're there to help. So reach out and schedule those meetings with them. Beyond the individual teachers, we also have the Learning Center up in the second floor of the library. There are peer tutors there. There's a schedule posted online in Veracross that they can see that they're which peer tutors and which subjects they tutor in. Every night they're there at lunchtime and in the evening during study hall. There's math help, math faculty staff the Learning Center as well during lunchtime and in the evenings at study hall. So, and writing instructors as well. There's a ton of resources that our students can connect with. So just making sure they know who's available, where they can turn when they need that help. And then, of course, taking a step back and thinking a little bit about, okay, in the day to day, you're doing your homework and you're getting things done and you're so busy. Let's just pause for a minute and think about, what are you enjoying? Are there classes that you're really enjoying that maybe are subjects you've always liked, or maybe it's something new that you've discovered since you've been at Governors, an interest you didn't know you had? What does that mean that you're really loving your biology class? Is that something you think you might want to study more of down the road? Maybe not. Maybe you're really loving being out in the marsh and doing some of the hands-on work. Are you really thinking about marine studies might be interesting, or environmental science? It's just a chance for students to kind of think about, what does this really mean? What do I like about it? And what does that mean for me in the future? Are there things that I might look at taking down the road that are unique opportunities I have here to explore those interests? So this is a good time for them to just very generally start thinking about what that might look like for them. So, like I said, the last thing we want to do is make their experience all about college, because they enough of them will try to do that anyway, and that is absolutely something that we guard them against. We want them to really enjoy these 4 years and really immerse themselves here at Governors, um, without being so focused on the college program. And so, the way that we think about this process Our seniors will tell you they're sick of hearing us say this to them, but controlling what they can control. There's a lot about this process. I'm sure you all know. I have a 10th grader, and as soon as she hit high school, my social media algorithms, just all of a sudden I started getting bombarded with all of these, who knows where they're coming from, but all this advice about college and which colleges have the best dining halls and what do you have to put on your extracurricular activity list to be successful in college. It was like Instagram was, just knew she was hitting high school and all of a sudden started just, bombarding me with all of these videos and advice. And it feels really overwhelming because, it feels like there's this void out there. There's all this information it feels like a very non-transparent kind of process. And so people rush in to fill that and try to, give advice. But a lot of a lot of that is really out of your students' control. You can't control that a college is really looking for students from the West Coast this year, and you grew up in Massachusetts. That's not something, unless your family wants to pick up and move to Idaho as for a senior year, not really something that you can change at this point. You can't change that at a college. We were just talking about Harry visited UNH earlier, and they're really, putting a lot of emphasis on engineering there right now. And if your student's not an engineer, they're not an engineer, and that's okay. That may not be, that may not be the major for them, or even if they hear a lot about that on their tour. What they can control is their own story. And so that's really how we work with them to define success in this process is identifying their story, taking advantage of all the resources here to explore their interests and their strengths, to learn about themselves and think about how can I share this story with colleges. I've taken time to really, dive into the courses here, figure out what I like, what I don't like, how I learn best. I can, I've tapped into the resources to get help here. I'm working up to my ability. I figured out some subjects I like. I have some ideas about what I might want to do down the road. I found some sports, some activities I love outside the classroom. Now, how can I put that all together and share that story with colleges so they see who I am, what I bring to their campus, who's going to show up, and how I can enrich their campus when I step onto campus in 4 years. So we really work with them closely, and that's why we have, we've assigned your child to their college counselor at this point so that they have a person, a contact person to go to in our office so that they can ask questions. It's not all about planning for college, but just to say, okay, so I kind of, I really loved this marsh research we did in biology. How do I do more of that? What opportunities are there for me? How can I figure this out? We're here to be a resource for them and answer some of those questions. And then, of course, help them share their story because we've also gotten to know them through basketball, through cross country, in the dorm, in community service, in advisory. We've helped them to shape that story. So that's why we do that matching process. It's not to put the college process front and center. We just want to be here to alleviate some of their questions and stress. And then help them navigate this, obviously, with independence and confidence. We want to give them all the information, all the tools, and all the support that they need for them to really lead the way and navigate this process with integrity and thoughtfulness. That's really what we're hoping for. We're here to be another member of their team with their advisor, their coach, their teachers, their dorm parents. We're just here to support them in another, as another person cheering them on. And that's where our philosophy comes in. Our philosophy is that, for our students, your college process starts with you. We want you to really start with the self-reflective piece of who are you? What interests, values, priorities, strengths, weaknesses have you identified during your time here at Governors? And what does that mean for the next step for you? Have you really thrived in the small classes with close attention from faculty members? Do you love the quiet rural setting? Are you looking to duplicate that for college? Or have you said, okay, that was okay for 4 years. I'm ready for bigger sites. I want to be in a city. I'd like to have a little bit more, more options available to me. What does that mean for your next steps? And of course, we also want them to take ownership of this process because they can do this. They get a lot of messages from social media and from people that are charging a whole lot of money to assist with this process. And the message is you can't do this on your own. And that's just not true. They absolutely can. We're equipping them over the next 4 years with the skills that they need to be good critical thinkers, writers, to analyze well, all of those good skills that they're going to use and use for the rest of their life. This is one of the first major decisions about their own futures that they're going to be making, and we want to set them off on the right foot with confidence, knowing they can do it. They've navigated this very adult process, and they've done it successfully and found a good match. So that's our philosophy. That's the message we're giving to your students. I'm going to turn it over a little bit now to Jack so he can talk a little bit more about kind of what colleges are valuing and looking for.
Thanks, Heather. So the big question, as Heather just said, we really try to share the sentiment and the message of controlling what you can control. And so, what should you be trying to control in terms of the college process? What should your child be looking at to try to do in order to stand out, in order to put together the strongest application that they can? Um, I would say something that, everyone struggles with, including me, is that focusing on the present, and trying to not, we obviously want students to think a little bit ahead, think about the future, think about what things they're interested in, things about what they want to do when they're at Govs, what they might want to do after they leave Govs, but not at the expense of what they're doing now, enjoying their friendships, enjoying getting to know their teachers, enjoying their classes, enjoying what they're doing outside the classroom, whether it's athletics, music, theater, community service, whatever it is. And so figuring out, focusing on the present, taking advantage of those resources, both academically that Heather mentioned, but also all the different resources that we have here at Govs, taking part in the weekend events, taking part in student council, taking part and different traditions around campus, and finding those opportunities both either at govs and outside of govs to be able to tell tell their unique and compelling story, as it says here, bloom where you're planted, everyone as a student here at govs, all students are students here at govs, they're part of the govs community, so take advantage of everything that's offered here. Now, when colleges are reviewing applications, you're going to hear, if you haven't already, a pretty overused term, which is holistic. Colleges say that they look at applications holistically, they take into account the whole student. For the most part, I think that that's true. They are taking into account the whole student. The first and foremost, most important thing for them is going to be your student's transcript. And so, they're going to be looking at two things when they look at a student's transcript. They're going to be looking at how well they're doing and how well they're challenging themselves within what's offered here at Governors. So each school, when a student applies to them, we one of the documents we send is called a school profile. It tells them the different classes that we have offered here, the different delineations, a little bit information about Govs, so that if they are not familiar with Govs, they know they know a little bit more about the environment a student is in. And when they're looking at transcripts, they're looking at, again, how well they're doing and how well they're challenging themselves. If a student is getting straight A's, but is not, taking a lot of honors or advanced or AP level classes, that will show that they're doing quite well, but that might not be showing that they are challenging themselves as much as they can within their curriculum that's here. On the other end of that spectrum, if a student goes from getting A's in some honors and mainly regular level classes to straight C's because they're taking every AP class that they can, that's not demonstrating that student's potential and what that student can do either, because that shows that they're overloading a little bit. And so colleges don't want to necessarily see that. They want to see a more of a keyword, I think, is balance, a challenging but not overwhelming course load. So maybe a student starts out with regular level classes, takes an honors level class in 10th grade, moves up to an AP class in 11th grade, and then maybe takes a couple of APs and an honors class or two in senior year, and their grades stay relatively the same. Maybe they started out with A's and a few B's, maybe they end with A's and a few B's. That's showing a nice progression in terms of rigor, but also a student is able to maintain the grades that they have. They don't want to, if a student, we understand that students come in from all different backgrounds and experiences, and maybe ninth grade's a pretty tough year, or 10th grade, if they start, any year you start a new school is going to be difficult. That transition can be difficult. So if a student starts off a little bit more slowly than they would hope, but they have that incremental grades going up and up and up and rigors going up, that's a good sign. Colleges don't want to see students overwhelming themselves with all the rigor that's available. That's a conversation that, at the end of each year, there's course selection. Students meet with their advisors to talk about that. One of the reasons, as Heather says, that we assign new students with their college counselor is that, so if they want to see how this might impact their college search or their college application process, they can come to us. They can come and talk with us about that. We have students at the end of ninth grade, more students at the end of 10th grade, and we do meet with every junior about that too before their senior year. So that's a little bit about academics, but also we want them to explore what they love outside the classroom. You know, if a student is really, really invested in basketball, and that's the main thing they like, but they also love soccer in the fall, and they like, they like business, so they want to be involved with stocks and trading. That's great. That's all colleges want to know that. But if a student thinks, oh, well, colleges want to see that I'm really interested in community service, or like I think that that's something colleges would like, or colleges would probably like that I like someone who writes a lot. So maybe I should try and write for the newspaper or write for the yearbook or be involved with that. If you're interested in that, definitely pursue it. But if that's not of interest to you, chances are it's not going to be of interest to colleges either. They want to see an authentic person. So if you're someone who genuinely loves basketball, stick with it in the winter, regardless of what level you're at. But if you're someone who's like, basketball isn't really my thing. My thing is more, you know, um, singing, and there's a winter musical that goes on every winter season. I really want to be involved with that, so I'm going to give up basketball. But will colleges think that it's weird that I'm starting something my junior year? No, do the winter musical if that's something that's really interested to you. So try to get outside the perspective of thinking, I need to do this so it looks good for college, and instead think about, I want to do this because I genuinely want to be a part of this. Next slide, Heather. Thank you. So, moving a bit about what colleges are looking for. So, that's the transcript. That's a little bit about extracurriculars and such. More and more colleges, still not a majority, are going back to requiring standardized testing, and many will accept standardized testing. There are some schools that are called test blind, that even if a student has an amazing SAT or ACT score, you can't submit it. It's not part of it. But because of that, we want all of our students to have some experience with standardized testing during their time here at Governors. In ninth grade, we don't ask any of our students to do anything. We don't want to burden them. We don't want to overwhelm them. If they want to come talk to us, they can. 10th grade is the first thing that we ask students to do as part of the college process, and that's to take a diagnostic SAT and a diagnostic ACT exam in late spring of a student's 10th grade year. So that means they'll be able to take essentially a practice test for both of them. They'll get feedback from our testing partner, and then they can talk about those results with their college counselor and think about, is standardized testing something that I want to be part of my process? And generally speaking, we recommend that students take at least one standardized test setting, whether it's the SAT or the ACT, doesn't matter, whatever's strongest for them, so that if they do fall in love with a school that requires it, they're not going to have any impediment to them to them applying. They can at the very least apply with that score. Um, but at the same time, with at least one testing administration, they can also see, hey, maybe standardized testing is something that I could use for this process. So the other ways that we look at it are, whether standardized testing should be part of your process or could possibly be. And then the second thing is, which test do you feel more comfortable with, the SAT or the ACT? Um, Moving into junior year, typically students in pre-calculus or higher math in junior year can take their first formal SAT or ACT in the fall. If students are in algebra 2, or maybe students aren't a big fan of testing or standardized testing in general, um, students can discuss that with us in winter and the spring. Algebra 2 is the last math that they'll need for the SAT and the ACT. So if they want to take a standardized test, we recommend doing that towards the end of their junior year. At Govs, we do host the ACT in September and in April. And then for the SAT, we've offered it in September, October, and May. We might go back to hosting it another month as well. I believe it's been in November, so there's a chance that we'll be hosting that next year. Yes, all right. So we'll be hosting that in November too. Um, we're not we'll be students can take that right on campus if they're able to sign up. With more colleges returning to testing, and just to make sure that there's nothing impeding their ability to apply, we definitely recommend doing some sort of standardized testing. Recruited athletes in some sports will need to talk with their college counselor earlier, to just talk about first round of testing earlier in junior year, possibly at the end of sophomore year, depending on what level they're trying to apply to, or trying to look at, whether it's Division 1, 2, or 3. And I think that that's a nice segue into the next slide. Um, which I believe is my last slide before I pass things off to Harry, which is about the athletic recruitment process. So, obviously, with the athletic recruitment process, students will be working with their coaches, whether it's their Govs varsity coaches or with their club team coaches or both. But college counselors should absolutely be still kept in the loop. As Heather said, we're a member of your team, and so we're here to support you and to be help you determine, first of all, academic eligibility, because the NCAA, if students are playing at the Division 1 or 2 level, has pretty strict requirements. And we want you to make sure that you're eligible. You're doing everything you need to be eligible. And then also looking at the different selectivities of these schools, like, you might be talking with coaches, but we also want you to understand the the application requirements, maybe, like, talking about classes that you should potentially try to take or standardized testing levels that you should try to hit. Um, or other things that you should be doing in order to make yourself the strongest possible candidate you can. The timing varies widely by sport and by level of competition. D1, D2, D3. If you are looking for Division 1, lacrosse, that can happen very, very early in your junior year. And for Division 3, that's typically after junior year. You might start the process towards the second half of junior year, but you might officially commit to the admissions process at schools during the summer before junior year. And some students are still actively being recruited into senior year. And so it's all about the sport. It's all about the level of competition. It's all about the competition within divisions or within leagues of the different levels. The first step is a conversation with your Govs coach, and potentially, if you have a club coach, with that person. If you talk to us about it, we don't know. You might be the best field hockey player on the planet, or you might be someone who could potentially play at the Division 3 level, or maybe college athletics, and you might want to aim more towards club sports or intramural sports. We can't assess you on that. Like, the best people who can are the people that see you practice and play every season, every game, every practice. And so that's the first step. And then, come to talk to us. We work with our coaches. I'm our athletics liaison in our office, and I work with our coaches, and they'll give me a sense of who has the ability to play at what level and what they've done so far. And so we're in strong communication with your Govs varsity coaches, but also just keep us in the loop about those things. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Harry.
Thanks, Jack. So let's talk about college visits. So many of you know that many colleges will offer virtual admissions tours, information sessions, not only virtual but on campus as well. We encourage you to attend those when appropriate. So if you're interested in the college, that's a good thing to do, as some of them do track demonstrated interest. As a ninth and 10th grader, I would say just notice what you're noticing. Like Heather said earlier in the presentation, you're at Govs right now. Notice, do you like being in a town that's, not, this is an hour away from Boston, or would you rather be in a true suburb like closer to Boston, maybe 15 minutes outside that has the T? Do you want to be in a city like at Boston University? So think less about selectivity and more about location and how it makes you feel. Um, and then you can decide, later in your Gov's career where you want to visit and apply to eventually. And so, like any relationship in life, colleges need to know that you're also thinking about them. And so, whenever you give them an email, it's a good way that they can track that you visited. And it's always nice to make relationships with admissions counselors at different colleges. So, just think about location and where you want to live in the future and what kind of community you want to be a part of. In terms of good times to visit, spring and summer break are excellent times to visit, mostly because you don't have school. And so, feel free to go visit your local colleges, or, if you're coming to Newberry, the great part about Boston is that it's basically one big college campus. And so you can get all different kinds of colleges in the area. BU feels very different than a Brandeis, or feels very different than a Bentley. So that's really nice about your student being at the Governor's Academy. Um, Now, in terms of missing class, I had a lot of fun today at UNH and not being at my desk. But that's not the usual, and we hope that's not the usual for any student here, that they're at the academy when they need to be. And so for for juniors, they may miss 2 days for college visits, and there's a process to follow if you are needing to miss your commitment at the academy for a visit. Um, so this all comes with prior approval. So any type of college visit, you would need prior approval from your counselor, teacher, or coach to miss anything. And then for affordability, so you can see on the screen here that we partner with College Money Method, and the link and the password are at the bottom of the screen. College Money Method is a great resource for our families about financial aid. The financial aid process can seem long, can seem a little daunting, but we're here to help you through it. And certainly, College Money Method can be a great way to learn more about the process. There are 2 upcoming workshops for ninth and 10th grade families, navigating the new system of college pricing and financial aid, and then understanding how colleges assess your ability to pay and aid eligibility. You'll notice with the titles that the sequence of presentations is aligned with the college process. And so, it would make sense that you are now navigating the new system of college pricing and financial aid as ninth and 10th grade families. And then as you get into 11th and 12th grade, they'll get more and more specific to where you are in the process. So again, I highly recommend you attend these. I haven't been to one yet, but I might join you on March 4th, April 15th to learn more myself, as it's a never-ending funnel of information and it's changing all the time. Something to look forward to. So before we let you ask all kinds of questions, I do want to remind you that you do have our emails as we've divided up students into counselor assignments. And so feel free to reach out to us. We will be meeting with your students in late January to check in after exams, go over a lot of the advice that we shared today. And then go through grades and our plans for standardized testing that will happen this winter. And so, with that being said, any questions for us?
And I think you just put them in the chat, or you can turn your mic on if you want. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
We did deliberately schedule this meeting with parents this early in the fall, but we are holding off on meeting with your students until January because we really do want them to make sure they're getting their feet under them. They're not so focused on the college process at this point, but they will be hearing a lot of this as well. We had a question about whether or not the PSAT is offered at Govs, and it is not. We've had a couple of 10th grade parents wondering about that this fall. We did used to offer it pre-pandemic, but since then it's been revamped. The scoring really doesn't align with the actual national SAT as well. And we just felt like it wasn't serving our students to take a whole day off of classes because you have to offer it on a Wednesday morning to take this test. We felt that the diagnostic program that we put into place where all of our 10th graders are taking a practice SAT and a practice ACT that's much more aligned with the actual test they'll be taking was just more effective use of their time. So we've stopped offering that. There's also a question about the College Money Matters website, and we will drop that in the chat so everyone can see that as well.
Working on that.
Thank you. What other questions? If you do happen to be traveling for Thanksgiving, like Harry said, this is a great time to visit schools. They do not need to be schools that necessarily, your child eventually applies to or is really all that interested in. It's just kind of fun sometimes to, if you happen to be out visiting family in California and they live in a college town, that's a great chance to maybe just go and walk around the school, get a feel for, what does a large school feel like, a small school, a suburban school, a city school, just like Harry said, so that your student can start kind of seeing the vast array of different kinds of options and places that are out there.
So yeah, there's a question about hosting universities on campus / online. So we do host college and university admission representatives each fall. We had around 60 or so, 60 to 65 this year come to meet with our students. We restrict those to seniors only. And we do that so that these meetings are for seniors who have been through the process for the past 9 months with us or so far, and that they are kind of towards the end of their college search at that time. They're finalizing their applications. They have really important questions for them regarding applications and final research ideas about like, should I apply to this major or that major? Is this school one that I want to apply early decision to, or do I want to remove this school from the list entirely? And so those and college representatives really enjoy speaking with our seniors, and they're ready to talk with with them about those things. Most of these visits are in person. We do offer a small number of virtual visits. For juniors, we are partnered with our Boston area independent schools for a college fair that is typically held at Babson College towards the end of April. That we provide transportation for any junior who wants to attend that visit, and there's over 100 colleges at this fair. They go around, they can introduce themselves, put down their information so they can get more information from the college, and kind of get introduced to the college. So that's kind of their first touch point that we really have, like, first our students, like, in the area. And, if they want to visit and speak with other college representatives, they can. And then when they come back for senior year in the fall, that's a little bit more targeted research that we ask them to do.
I'm happy to take on the question about summer activities and general
Mhm.
advice. So I think summer activities are going to fall a lot into what Jack said about being an authentic human being when you apply to college. Um, do what you're interested in, do what you need to do. If you want to be a camp counselor, if you feel like you have to make money, um, go do that. You know, like Jack said, colleges are really going to be interested in what you're interested in. And so we're happy to talk about activities. Usually we don't talk about the activities until like the activities list needs to be done in the Common App. But certainly, if your student has a question, we're happy to advise, or if they're trying to decide between a couple things, we can give our general advice.
I'm also putting the dates for the practice. There's a question about when the 10th graders take those practice tests. The practice SAT is on Sunday, February 22nd, from 9 to 12, I think is the window. It probably won't take quite that long. The ACT is Sunday, April 26th, again, 9 to 12. Those are taken online, so students can just do those from home. They can do them from their dorm room. We will get them all registered, and they'll have a website they go to, and they just progress through the test. And then they typically will get their scores back from our testing partner, Revolution Prep, within the week. So they'll get those back fairly quickly. We had a question about whether or not we are an accommodation site for the ACT. Yes, we are. The ACT has a wider range of accommodations than the SAT offers. So it does, I can't say that blanket across the board for all the different combinations of accommodations they may offer, but I think we do offer most. And Brigida Allen in the Learning Center is the coordinator of all of the testing accommodations. So if your student already has some neuropsych testing on file with us, or you're thinking, gosh, I think they might need extended time, where do I even begin with that? Reach out to Brigida Allen in our Learning Center. She can walk you through that. She's an expert. She's done it, advised a lot of students and is really experienced with that. So she can definitely walk you through that. What other questions can we answer? Well, it is 7:40, and you all
Mhm.
have been incredibly generous to give up your evenings with us. So I think we can probably also let you go. Um, oh, question about ninth graders in the AP. No, we don't offer any AP classes. Well, I should take that back. Some of our ninth graders might be advanced enough in math, maybe a
Mhm.
language, that they might be taking an AP course, in which case they would take the AP exam. That's a required part of taking an AP class at Governors. But those are typically only a handful of students that are in those higher levels of math or a foreign language. Typically, they're not, ninth graders aren't offered any AP classes. So typically that starts in 10th grade when they might take one. All right, but we will let you all go. You have our contact information. Like Harry said, you've got our email addresses and names in that email. We will be posting this recording on the parent portal as well. If you happen to come in the middle and missed a little bit at the beginning, you can watch that. But again, we're just really grateful for you all for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.